Now we begin to talk about Chapter 11, which is focused on industry, energy, and manufacturing. So in this chapter, what we want to figure out is to be able to define what industry is, examine where it began, and why and where and why, and why and where we see industry today. So we want to take a look at kind of where it began, where it's kind of transformed over time, and kind of the reasons for why that has happened. So looking at, if we talk about the Rostow development model, looking at stage 3, the takeoff period, why did it develop in certain countries initially, and then why did it spread to other countries later on? So we also want to examine and analyze the impacts of the spread of industry and the importance of resource use and sustainability over time on development, economics, social studies, and in the environment, and also explaining some issues between industry and labor rights. So in a normal year, we would spend a lot more time on the sustainability and resource usage. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on videos with that, especially about the differences between renewable and non-renewable, all the different types of energy sources. Again, the book does a really good job covering a lot of those very briefly, very quickly, in a very good manner. So instead, I'll focus mainly on kind of the sustainability issues with, in relation to energy use and pollution, and then also how that affects, job usage or job availability and things of that nature. And also, we would spend more time. We would watch a documentary called Roger and Me that would predominantly look at the issue of labor and deindustrialization starting in the 1980s. And it's a very good documentary, very enjoyable one. So if you can find it online, that's great. Otherwise, again, we just do not have the time to cover it this year because again of the pandemic and everything. But if we did, we would definitely discover and talk about the relationship between labor, the economy, migration patterns, and how that ties itself into industry in an area that was and is continually deindustrializing. So, in terms of our understanding, looking at where industry began. So, our definition of industry is just the manufacturing of goods in a factory, which is that secondary type of economic activity. So, primary is the extraction of natural resources, so agriculture, mining, things related to that. Then, industry is the manufacturing of those natural resources into finished products that people would like to buy and sell. All right. So, where they were manufactured before was essentially in the home. Typically what we call cottage system or cottage factory, kind of shown up here in the upper right hand corner, an example of a European one. But most manufactured goods that people wanted to buy for hundreds of years were not made in Europe, or at least not large amounts. A lot of it came in from India and from China via what we call the Silk Roads. And they had very little usage to buying European goods because they were of poor quality or not thought of to be useful to their societies. That changes again, or that really does change in the 1750s due to the expansion of the Industrial Revolution, starting in Great Britain, shown here on this map, where Great Britain begins to understand the usage of coal and steam power to run factories and to produce more goods more efficiently at a faster rate with more people involved than at a slower rate what you would see here, where things were predominantly made in the home using human and animal power, to, again, more natural resources such as coal power. All right, and that's kind of where we begin to see the Industrial Revolution begin to take off, and then following in Europe, North America, Latin America, and then over time, kind of, until, the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, that's when we begin to see a shift away from those, first beginning industrial regions into other parts of the globe considered more what we consider now to be the semi-periphery, which would again continue to still be Latin America, but then India and China would obviously be taking on those roles much later in history. All right. So Great Britain, a lot of that also comes down to the fact that they had a very large population. There was a shortage of trees due to, again, deforestation and growing of croplands, and again, the overpopulation. But they also had, again, the setup for economics because they had a very loose political viewpoint. They were very much pro-capitalist, pro-market economy, and that also drove entrepreneurship to invest more and do more research, trial and error within the idea of building up the factories and the economy. And so, due to the fact that we have manufactured goods, where we are growing and creating more things at faster rates, more efficiently, prices are lowered and people can begin to buy more goods than they want, that they want and don't need, and they will typically often have more money left over. Hence where we get the idea of the consumer economy is where we're buying stuff that we do not need. And that's kind of, again, a transformation of where we begin to have surpluses of excess goods in many different areas resulting from this industrial revolution. Right, and that will include to the movement of urbanization and improved quality of life over time, because urban areas around factories typically did not initially have a very good quality of life due to working conditions and pollution, but over time that definitely improved. Especially again as more people were moving to the factories to get jobs and away from the farmland, which again spurs the loss of people in the rural areas. Okay, so our main industrial regions here globally, so you can kind of see again throughout Europe, again beginning in Great Britain and then spreading throughout much of Europe, North America, and then kind of here in East Asia within Japan, Korea, and China. And again, a lot of these areas are, you can kind of see, around water sources. All right, so a lot of access to water is really essential, again, in terms of transporting goods to and from other areas. And most of it, again, is used with fossil fuels, which are non-renewable energy sources by plant and animal, or so again, coal, petroleum, natural gas, a lot of it coming from plant and animal residue from millions of years ago. So that's the shift away from animal and human power that was done before. All right, so why do we see, actually we'll start that in the next video, why industries are located in certain areas. So that's kind of a very brief wrap up of the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution and those locations, which will then spread again over time to other parts of the globe.